There are thoughts in my head. I have no one to talk to about. Please write or call me back. Your #1 fan, Killian Maddox.
Hi, I just finished filming this video, but I wanted to say something quick. In magazine dreams and also in a lot of people who are in the Looksmaxing community, autism is a very prevalent discussion. Killian Maddox is coded very heavily as an autistic man, and as an autistic person myself, I tried to think about how I wanted to approach the conversation about his actions while also acknowledging his autism. I decided not to focus on it as much because this kind of whole conversation is about alienating and acceptance, and I wanted it to be more on how we as viewers received the movie and how we receive dangerous content like from Clavicular. So I kind of didn't really talk about it. But, you know, as an autistic person, I definitely know that that adds another layer to these conversations, but I wanted it to be more about actions and perspectives. Thanks. An undeniable part of the human experience is connection. The things that we do for love and acceptance is what creates so much prosperity and also harm. Yearning to be understood is the universal language of humanity. It surpasses any genres, going beyond discussions of relationships. Take, for instance, something like George Orwell's book, 1984. Arguably, it's the most well-known political warning of all time. But even in its analysis of current affairs, one of its most famous lines is about connection. The line is, "Perhaps one did not want to be loved so much as to be understood." It is impossible to separate acceptance and connection from any topic. And maybe it's this that makes it so frustrating that as humans, we create social groups and alienation. We other those who are not like us, despite wanting to connect. The movie Magazine Dreams does a very, very good job of illustrating this kind of weird space to exist in as a species. It puts you as a viewer in a place wanting to accept Killian Maddox while also rejecting him. You understand the tragedy of his upbringing and his situation, and you empathize with his compulsive need to be accepted and to be part of a group. You may even relate to the frustration of how he's constantly mistreated, but you can't kind of reject this innate discomfort you have around his character. Or maybe I'm projecting, I don't know. But what makes me think this is kind of a universal, or mostly universal watching experience is the way the movie is set up. It'll go back and forth between these moments where you understand and emphasize Killian, and then it'll go to moments of his violence. It's uncomfortable and it places responsibility on you as a viewer to be like, yeah, I'm emphasizing with someone who's doing these violent things, but I'm also alienating someone who just wants to be accepted. A great scene that kind of shows this, even without violence, is the scene of the date, because you can feel his desperation and how badly he wants this. But it's impossible to ignore that he's very quickly only talking about himself.
I want to be Mr. Olympia one day.
And kind of ignoring his date in order to go into this obsessive spiral. It asks the question of what would you do in this situation? How would you handle Killian, where you understand him, but you can't accept it? And as I was thinking about this question when I watched, I couldn't help but think about the Looksmaxing community and everything going on with Clavicular and this kind of increase in like black pale alpha male content. And it's very obvious that no matter what gender you are, this new internet trend does a lot of harm. It's so clearly rooted in fake beauty standards and toxic ideas of masculinity, and then of course a violent dislike of women, and then, no shocker, racist actions from these influencers. It's deeply disturbing, but despite that, you can also really sense that these boys have been lacking connection and are just using any means necessary to be accepted, even if the method of doing so is super, super harmful. I couldn't stop seeing the parallels to Killian Maddox when I was watching Magazine Dreams. The way that these boys go about connecting with others is very similar to Killian Maddox, where it's hypermasculine and obsessed in a certain beauty standard. Undeniably, Killian Maddox cannot connect with people, so he uses the sport of bodybuilding as a means to be accepted. He takes the universal experience of the human body and tries to mold it to objective and measurable standards in order to appease people.
Judge told me my deltoids were too small. When someone hears that your deltoids are small, they're essentially saying 3 muscle groups are small, which is quite insulting.
To be seen as cool or alpha or one of them, or just like one of the greats, defying standards in order to be a part of that standard.
That divides then one from a champion and one from not being a champion. If you can go through this pain barrier, you make it to be a champion. If you can't go through, forget it.
The more severe his obsession gets, the more he feels like he is fitting in. That's why his biggest violent spirals happen when his bodybuilding career is threatened, or more broadly, when his masculinity is threatened. Over and over again, in my head, I was like, wow, this makes so much sense in regards to Clavicular and the Looksmaxing community. I mean, Killian self-induces vomiting. He takes steroids. He risks his life over and over again. He knows the risks. He's told by the doctors that he will die if he doesn't accept help.
Have you been listening to what I'm saying? You need to let us help.
You're not coming at me with a knife.
And then I go on TikTok and I see Clavicular bone smashing, taking meth.
I use crystal meth as a stimulant and to lean. It's much more mild than Adderall, actually, and I'm pretty much using meth for hollow cheeks.
Just doing these horrible things for his body, self-harm, to fit into these standards that he is perpetuating, that he is making so extreme and accessible to a general audience. That's just kind of like harmful and frustrating. And it's even worse because you can understand it to a degree when you think about it through the lens of magazine dreams or human connection. And when you watch these clips of Clavicular, he doesn't even look like the alpha he's claiming to be or the beauty standard that he's portraying. He looks like a hurt, scared little boy. And I don't say that to be mean. I say that to show a parallel with Killian. Killian is ultimately, despite all of his, looksmaxing or bodybuilding or whatever you want to call it, he's ultimately the little boy who watched his parents die. It's what sets magazine dreams apart from movies like Black Swan and Whiplash. In magazine dreams, it's not the artist versus the art that is consuming them. It's the artist Killian Maddox using the art of bodybuilding to fill his compulsive need for acceptance and connection. When noticing these parallels between the Looksmaxing community and magazine dreams, it brings back up that question of your responsibility as a viewer. It's a question of alienation versus accommodation versus acceptance. How do we balance knowing where this harm comes from and empathizing with it, while also being deeply disgusted by a lot of these individuals' actions? I would say that the movie Magazine Dreams answers this question for us a little bit. What leads Killian into such a spiral is ultimately his lack of connection and him misreading opportunities to connect. And the movie shows this through events and sequences, but also symbolic imagery. The moments he's supposed to be connecting are actually the ones that are most tense, at least visually speaking. When he receives the phone call of Jesse accepting the date, you can see that the line of the phone cord is being coiled and stretched really, really tightly. Even though a connection is being formed, it's tense, it's not natural. Bodybuilding is his main attempt at connecting with others and appealing to others, but that's the most tense thing of them all in this movie. It's shredding him apart. It is killing him mentally and physically. These moments that should be points of connection are so tense because it's still a rehearsal. It's still an act for Killian. He still is not accepting of himself. He has so heavily bought into his own distorted standards that he believes that he himself will never fill them. The deep unease that Killian has with himself and his instability in his own mind can be sensed by the people around him, and it furthers this alienation. It's a truly vicious cycle. The more Killian is not accepted by others, the more he does not accept himself and relies on these really, really, really harmful behaviors, causing more people to alienate him as they notice his instability. Only is this cycle broken when Killian sees the very, very worst of himself. Now, does this mean we allow Clavicular and other people in that community to continue to be harmful to the point of major crimes? No, not what I'm saying. I'm trying to say that there's a space that exists where you can be blunt about the harm that people like Clavicular are doing, about their racism, about their violent misogyny. And we can also say that there are steps that, if taken, can lead to redemption. In Magazine Dreams, Killian got worse the more he felt like he couldn't be redeemed, the more he felt like he was playing into these kind of roles of being angry and evil. The more he felt like he was fitting into these roles, like the police officer who racially profiled him or the white woman who clutched her purse around him, the more he lost hope. He was alienated, and then he alienated himself further to the point where that alienation felt permanent. It was when Killian was hugged during his breakdown by his grandfather that we begun to see measurable growth of Killian's character, when his grandfather said, "I'm here, I got you." And not only did he say, "I'm here," he also said, "I understand, I know." Perhaps one did not want to be loved so much as to be understood. I know who you are. I know what you did was wrong. I know these beliefs that you had are wrong. And I believe in your chance of redemption, of character development. I know I'm here. I got you. When you see the worst parts of someone through the lens like a movie, Magazine Dreams, you also begin to see where those worst parts come from. And you don't excuse it, and you don't tolerate it, and you don't allow it, but you don't permanently alienate either. Alienation and the failure to be accepted was what made Killian Maddox Killian Maddox. And I think it's a big issue in these Looksmaxing communities. I think once again, as viewers, we're asked, how do we handle this situation of understanding while also holding accountable? What is our responsibility? How can we create a space where we say, wow, someone like Clavicular is doing real danger to society. He's really doing awful things, awful harm, while also recognizing alienation is a really big reason of why we got to the part of where we are. Not through the lens of male or female, more so through the lens of connected versus unconnected. Because as we see in Magazine Dreams, masculinity and Looksmaxing are often just people's ways of trying to be accepted. I hope that my rant and the connection of these two things made at least a little bit of sense. I really enjoyed this movie. And finally, I wanted to acknowledge that there's like a big racial part in the perspectives of Magazine Dreams, and also in how Clavicular acts. And I wanted to say, basically, I know I as a white woman can't really understand that, but I hope I acknowledge it well enough, and if you think there's anything I can do better from that lens, let me know, because I'm definitely trying to learn more about that too. The last thing before I go is, one, I'm very new to this. This is my first thing I've ever made like this, so please bear with me through any like camera issues or audio issues. And then two, the actor in Magazine Dreams, Jonathan Majors. I found out kind of after watching Magazine Dreams that Jonathan Majors has done some very cruel and awful things to women. So I want to make sure that this video is not an excuse to that either. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Like I said before, I'm autistic and this is a very good outlet for me. And if you're interested in anything else you think I should cover, let me know. Bye.